All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And today is a big day for us. So every February, we kick out all the men and spend the entire month featuring incredible women in science and exploration from around the globe. And we do that because of today. So today, February 11th, is the International Day for Women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, for those who might not know that. And to celebrate, we are doing an epic slate of 5 incredible programs today. And even bigger than that, which I'll bring up in a banner in a second, all weekend long. So starting tomorrow at I think 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, we are doing 50 programs featuring incredible scientists and explorers around the world all weekend long. So literally like every 30 minutes, we're going to a new incredible speaker. Hopefully you guys get the chance to tune in. It's free for all involved, and it's going to be one of the biggest things we've ever done. So with that said, to kick off our big day today, we are joined live at the University of Victoria by Dr. Morgan Martin. So she gets to listen to an underwater symphony. She works in marine bioacoustics, so she gets to listen in on all those incredible marine mammals that live off Canada's stunning west coast. We've had divers on from all over the world, and consistently the place that they like to dive and go the most is off the coast of British Columbia, which is pretty exciting. So Morgan gets to listen in on that world. I'm so excited to hear what she has to share with us today, and I hope you guys are too. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Martin, and take us away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here today on Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And as Jesse mentioned, I'm working with the University of Victoria and the Wildlife Conservation Society in Canada. Right now I'm working on a bowhead whale acoustics project, which I'll go into later. But when I say the word acoustics, I mean all things dealing with sound. So you're going to hear that word a lot in this presentation. First, I'm going to give you a bit of a background about what I do for a living. And then we will talk about some awesome facts about how dolphins echolocate and communicate underwater. But first, I want to show you a couple pictures of the wonderful animals that I work with to help put into perspective for you just about how gigantic these animals are. We'll take it away. This is a blue whale, the largest animal to have ever existed on Earth. They can reach up to almost 100 feet in length and 170 tons. If you notice in the bottom corner of the picture, there's a human scuba diving for a size comparison. So please keep in mind as you listen to this presentation that my job working with these animals is not like your typical job working with animals that you can just pick up and move around easily. This is a humpback whale with another scuba diver for comparison. These are about half the size of blue whales. They reach up to about 50 feet in length and weigh over 60 tons. So you may be wondering, how do you study these giant creatures? Well, I am a marine mammal scientist, particularly in the field of cetaceans, which is the word that we use to group together all the different species of whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And my focus is in underwater acoustics. This means that I study how sound travels underwater, especially sounds that cetaceans make. The majority of cetaceans can echolocate, just like bats, and which means that they produce a form of biological sonar to navigate underwater. They also use their sonar to hunt fish and other prey. These animals are often highly social species, and because of that, they communicate with one another a lot underwater. So I also study their communication sounds and how they differ from species to species. Underwater acoustics is a booming field right now. There are a lot of projects studying how underwater noise pollution affects marine mammals, and acoustics can also be used as a way to estimate cetacean population sizes for a given area. We record the different sounds that cetaceans make underwater, and from that, we can describe what species they are, how they're using a given area, whether it's for hunting or migrating or resting, and we can also estimate how many of those animals are in a given area. So let's start with just some quick basics to make you understand to make sure you understand what I'm talking about. I already mentioned the word cetacean is the word that we as scientists use to group together all whales, dolphins, and porpoises. All cetaceans are marine mammals, and they spend their entire lives living in the water. They must go to the surface every few minutes to breathe air, and they use a blowhole or a pair of blowholes located on the top of their heads to do this. Since they're mammals, they're all warm-blooded. They give birth to live young, and their babies drink milk from their mothers for between usually 6 months to up to 2 years. Cetaceans are grouped into 2 categories. These are called baleen whales and toothed whales. And I will go over the difference between the two groups in just a moment. So currently, there are 90 recognized species of cetaceans in the world. All the ones pointed one way, the giant ones, it's on the left on my screen, it might be on the right on yours. These are the baleen whales. And all the ones on the right are all the toothed whales. So there are 73 species of toothed whales out of the 90, and then the remainder are the baleen whales. So baleen whales, what's the difference? Instead of teeth, they have these things called baleen plates that hang down from their upper jaw. And baleen plates are actually made of keratin, just like your hair and your fingernails are. So baleen plates are used as a giant filter because baleen whales, instead of hunting, they actually scoop up mouthfuls of water that contain little tiny organisms called plankton and krill. And so all the water gets strained out of their baleen plates and exits their mouth, and then they get to swallow all the little stuff that's left inside. And these are actually the largest animals that exist on planet Earth and to have ever existed on planet Earth. And they also make some of the longest migrations on Earth out of any species every year. Toothed whales, they have all the teeth, all of their teeth are the same shape in their jaw and the upper and lower portion of their jaw, as you can see from these two different species in the picture. These are your predators, so they're hunters. They eat fish, squid, and sometimes other mammals. They have to use their teeth to help catch the stuff that they're going to eat every day. And just to let you know, all species of dolphins are included in the groups of toothed whales. And all toothed whales are known to echolocate, which they use to navigate and to hunt and find food underwater. So I mentioned to you that I work in underwater acoustics, studying the sounds that cetaceans make underwater. Why is sound important to cetaceans and marine mammals in general? In the ocean, very little sunlight can reach past the surface. That means that after going just a few feet underwater, the ocean gets very dark and you cannot see anything. Since they can't see in the dark water that these animals live in, they actually rely on using sound for everything that they would normally use vision for. Sound travels really well underwater. In fact, it travels 4.5 times faster underwater than it does in air, making it the perfect medium for these animals to use it to hunt and communicate with one another on a daily basis. So I mentioned that all toothed whales can echolocate, and they actually do so frequently. They echolocate a few times every second. When a dolphin echolocates, it produces a pulse of sound energy that is projected out of its forehead and into the water in front of the animal. The animal is producing a biological form of sonar, and we call all of these little pulses echolocation clicks. The dolphin will produce a series of echolocation clicks in a row and wait for them to bounce off an object underwater. When this happens, the dolphin receives the echo from the object that the click bounces off of. For example, a fish like you see in this picture. The echo from the fish is picked up in the dolphin's bottom jawbone, and from there it travels to the brain and it sends a message about the location and the size of the fish. It's pretty cool, huh? So part of my job is to record different species of dolphins underwater to learn more about how they echolocate and communicate with one another. This is an example of what some echolocation clicks look like when I look at them on a computer screen. This way of looking at sound is called a spectrogram. Each individual yellow vertical line in the spectrogram is a single echolocation click produced by a commerson's dolphin, which is the animal shown in the photo. These are beautiful, tiny black and white dolphins, and they're one of the smallest dolphin species in the world, weighing less than 100 pounds. They're native to Patagonia, which is in southern South America. I was really fortunate to get to go there last year to record them. And something cool to note is that I put a red circle around the uppermost hearing level for humans, which is 20 kilohertz. So these dolphins are what we call ultrasonic because they actually echolocate at frequencies higher than humans can hear. And if you look at the yellow lines, they all start above 100 kilohertz, which means that these dolphins echolocate 5 times higher than human hearing, which is amazing, right? So in the top corner, you'll see a small photo of a hydrophone. This is a type of underwater recording microphone that I use to record the dolphin sounds underwater. Modern technology has really helped us out for working in underwater acoustics. We used to have to bring a ton of electrical, battery-powered gear and cords onto a boat, and then set it all up, hope it works, and then drive out and try to find some dolphins. Nowadays, we can bring these small handheld hydrophones with us anywhere, and they charge through a USB port, and they can hold a battery for several days at a time. So it actually makes working in remote locations incredibly handy. Now, I mentioned echolocation sounds, but I also said dolphins communicate with one another a lot. And they produce two main types of communication sounds. The first type are called whistles, which are similar to the whistles that you think of humans making. Whistles can be actually unique to individual dolphins. Some species whistle and other species don't, but the ones that do whistles, several of their species actually are known to produce signature whistles, which are unique to individual dolphins. And we know that they use these whistles to identify themselves underwater. Here's some example of some bottlenose dolphin whistles. And the second main type of communication sounds that dolphins produce are called burst pulses, which is actually what their name implies. It's a burst of pulses. These are just a bunch of echolocation clicks that are emitted in packets together at an extremely fast rate. So a lot of burst pulses are comprised of clicks that are produced at about 500 clicks per second, which is incredible. So our human ears actually can't discern these. Dolphins most likely can probably hear all the individual clicks that make these up. But whenever something reaches over about 200 clicks per second, our human ears actually hear it as more of like a humming sound. And so I will go ahead and play this set of burst pulses to you, and you'll hear what it sounds like from a human's perspective. Yeah, so that's just them talking to one another. This is a photo of my research partner, Sarah, when she and I went to Antarctica for work last year. She's holding a hydrophone, just like the one I showed you in the previous couple slides. So we were using this hydrophone to record humpback whales and seals down in Antarctica. And we typically tie the hydrophone to a rope, and we connect the rope to the side of the boat, and then we throw the hydrophone into the water. The hydrophone will record a very wide range of frequencies underwater, and then we can download the recordings it made onto our laptops later in the day when we get back to land. So I'm going to show you a quick video of the hydrophone underwater. You can see it on the white rope in this video, and there's some Peale's dolphins swimming around it. This happened in Patagonia last year. And you won't be able to hear these dolphins echolocating because Peale's dolphins are also ultrasonic, just like those Commerson's dolphins. Yeah, so you can see it on the white rope there, and essentially the animals swim by it, and we record them echolocating and talking to one another. And as long as the animals are close by, it's pretty much as simple as that. This is an underwater video of some of those same Peale's dolphins being a total nuisance to some southern right whales that were also hanging out in the area. Southern right whales are a type of baleen whale. And this is just to show you that sometimes we get lucky and we get to record two different species at once. A newer research avenue that I've begun working with is using scientific drones to help you collect data on cetaceans. And last year, while I was in Patagonia, we used a drone to fly over groups of dolphins while recording their acoustics underwater at the exact same time. This gives a really good way to show, to view dolphin behaviors when we sync the underwater recordings with the drone video footage. So then I can look at what types of sounds the dolphins make when they are doing different behaviors, like hunting or resting and socializing with one another. This helps me to better piece together what we call a dolphin species acoustic repertoire, which is really just the same thing as a dolphin's vocabulary. And here's an example of some of the drone footage we collected last year with Commerson's dolphins. We can use the video footage from the drone to measure several things from the dolphins, including their swimming speed, their breathing rates, and a new thing that we've just learned how to do is actually to figure out the dolphin's sonar strength by using the drone. So we do this by measuring the distance the dolphin is from the hydrophone underwater, which is shown in this picture by the red line. And so you use the tip of the dolphin's nose, and then you draw a line from where the hydrophone is located underwater, and you measure that distance. And from that, we can back calculate how loud or strong the dolphin's sonar is by measuring how loud their echolocation clicks are. We can also use the drone footage to measure the body length and assess the size and weight of the animals that we record. And this technique is called photogrammetry, and it allows us to assess the health of the animals in that population. Sometimes the drone can actually help you capture really, really unexpected events too, like this one. And this happens to be the largest group of Commerson's dolphins ever recorded. We had around 100 dolphins around our boat, and this was on Christmas Eve. And this is very, very unusual because these animals are usually only found in groups of less than 4 animals. And here we had 100. So I'm going to play this for you, and I've paired it with the underwater sound from the hydrophone. And I've actually manipulated the sound in this recording so that you can hear it with your human ears. And it's going to sound like a bunch of buzzing sounds. These are them echolocating all around the hydrophone. But there's so many of them that it sounds kind of crazy. Oops. Let's try that again. So my work and passions have taken me all over the world, excuse me, and I am very fortunate to have seen some pretty cool things. An average day for me can be completely different depending on if I'm working in the field or if I'm in my office. Last year, I was really fortunate and had 3 full months of fieldwork before the pandemic hit, and I spent December through February in Patagonia and Antarctica. On a typical day of fieldwork there, my research assistant Sarah and I would go out on a boat for most of the day with the Coast Guard to go look for dolphins. When we found them, we would launch the drone and fly it overhead, and then I would drop the hydrophones in over the side of the boat, and then we would pair the recordings together, and I would go through them later on at night. And then, however, most of my days, though, are spent working at a desk, like you see in this picture, going through all the recordings I collected during my fieldwork, analyzing all the data, using a sound software program, and then writing papers about what I found. I think the hardest part of my job revolves around securing funding for new projects and salary. Research-related positions often require you to write and submit rather complicated grant applications that are highly competitive. And these grants generally only provide funding money for 1 to 2 years, depending on the project. My current research project that I mentioned is I'm working up in Canada, all about bowhead whales, which are the longest living mammal on planet Earth. They get up to be over 200 years old. And my project involves tagging these whales in the Canadian Arctic. You can see where I'm going to be on this map right here. It's a little place called Echolocate. It's in Nunavut up in Canada. And we're going to tag bowheads with non-invasive tags like you can see in this upper right-hand picture. They're called cat's tags. They actually attach onto the whale with a suction cup, so it doesn't hurt the whale at all, and then they just pop off when they're done recording. And these tags are incredible. They can record the 3D body movements of the whale underwater, and they also have a hydrophone built in on them, so they can record all the sounds the whale makes and all the sounds that the whale hears around it. So this is actually a conservation project that we're trying to do to assess how shipping noise up in the Canadian Arctic affects and causes disturbance to bowhead whales. So right now we're trying to anticipate how loud of a sound from a ship or any other type of noise pollution that might be happening in the area is causing any of these whales to change behavior or to leave the area and change their behaviors in general. So right now our planet currently has a really big issue with underwater noise pollution, as you may have heard, from shipping and seismic oil activity from the Navy and marine construction, you name it. And each marine mammal species is unique in the frequencies that it uses to communicate and navigate. And thus each species must be studied in order to understand how noise pollution of various forms may affect or even harm these animals. From there, we can provide the results that we find to the policymakers who are responsible for governing the oceans and putting marine laws into place. So that's what I'm planning on doing for the next 2.5 years up there. And with that, I will go ahead and take any questions. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Morgan. That was awesome. The feedback on YouTube has been tremendous. We have over 300 kids tuning in from Wisconsin, Alabama, North Carolina, across Ontario, not to mention our live classes. So I'm excited to dive in with them in just a minute. But yeah, if you're on YouTube and if you're a teacher, you haven't let me know where you're joining from yet, please do there. You can share questions and I'll take as many as I can. But we're going to start with Mr. Dunn's class. They're joining us in Sudbury, Ontario. Mr. Dunn, if you want to kick us off and begin, go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Morgan. That was awesome. That seems like so much fun. You get paid to do such a great job.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Morgan in my class, and hopefully you can hear. If not, I will repeat the question. So, Morgan, if you want to turn your microphone on and ask your question, that would be really awesome.
Thinking about it.
Go ahead, Morgan.
How far away can they hear other dolphins' communication?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. So it all depends on the frequency of the types of sounds that they make. So whistles, when a dolphin communicates with one another with a whistle, that's typically a lower frequency sound, and lower frequency sounds will travel a lot farther underwater than a higher frequency sound does. So like we call echolocation clicks sometimes higher frequency compared to whistles. So whistles can actually travel, I believe the farthest that they've modeled is up to about 4 miles underwater.
So try yelling when you leave this broadcast. Go outside and see how loud you can scream and see if people can hear you 4 miles away, and your teachers will
Exactly.
look at the end. By the way, I forgot to mention Patagonia. Just every time people mention working in Patagonia, it's like the best name for sounding like foreign and exotic and amazing. So lucky you.
Yes.
Very cool. Let's go to Miss Oak's class. They're joining us in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. You guys just need to demute your mic. And in fact, all our teachers can unmute their mics right now. The way StreamYard works, I won't hear you till I bring you in. So Miss Oakes, come on in and go for it. Just got to demute. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah. We have so many different questions. We have a question about, can different species hear the clicks and the whistles of other species? Can they use it as a warning that there's another species nearby? Do you know about, has there been any research in that area of understanding other species sounds that they make?
Very cool.
Yes. The answer is yes. So typically a lot of the dolphins, or all of the toothed whales, so they have a really broad, much broader hearing range than the larger baleen whales. Baleen whales more or less hear at best really lower frequencies. And so we're actually not quite sure if they can hear echolocation clicks and things like that. But we do know that all of the toothed whale species in general, they probably can hear at least some part of each other's clicks and stuff like that. So some of the ones that I showed you, those really high frequency ones, those species tend to have the widest hearing range, and they should be able to hear pretty much any toothed whale. A couple of other species, it's a bit of a narrow one, but we do know that some killer whales will eavesdrop and listen for dolphins of other species and other animals calling, and then they'll sneak up on them through eavesdropping, and they will attack and hunt them that way. We also know that other species of marine mammals, including seals and dolphins, when you play back sounds of orcas or killer whale sounds to them, they will flee because they're afraid that there's a predator in the area. So that way is one way that we know that they actually can recognize and identify the different species underwater. Yeah.
Very cool. I love when we get to explain exactly how the science works, which is awesome. For our classes too, Blue Planet 2, which is quite possibly the greatest natural history documentary ever, has a really amazing scene off the coast of New Zealand with false killer whales and dolphins, what look to be talking to one another. So I encourage you guys to check out Blue Planet 2 if you get the chance. It's really an amazing piece of filmmaking. Let's head to Mr. Shattuck's class, joining us in Chalk River, Ontario. Mr. Shattuck, come on in, guys, and go for it.
Hi, I would like to know when dolphins mate, and also if the female has one or more at a time.
Okay, when dolphins mate. Well, that's actually a fun question. Dolphins they can mate any time of year, and they do. Sometimes they have more often, babies in certain seasons, depending on where they are, but you can actually see calves all year round, which is the only other species other than humans, I believe, unless there's some monkeys, primates as well, but I'm not sure about that. So you can have babies any time of year, and they almost always will only just have one at a time. And depending on the species, they'll raise that baby for up to 5 years. Usually it's just about a year, but.
Very, very cool. I've never heard that one of our broadcasts before. That's awesome. Great question, guys. I'm going to go to Mr. G's class at Nahani Way in just a second, but I'm going to take a quick question from YouTube from Ms. Foster's class. So they want to know, how long can cetaceans hold air in their bodies? Do they have to sleep close to the surface so that they can get air, which is a really cool question.
That's a great question. So it depends on the species, but some animals like sperm whales, they can dive for over an hour and hold their breath that long. So depending on the animal and the size of its lungs, they can hold their breath for a very long time. On average, they'll go and dive for 7 to 10 minutes and then come up and take a breath. But usually when they sleep, they will sometimes they lay on the bottom, but usually they'll log at the surface with just their head a little bit above the water. And they can actually sleep with one eye open. They turn half of their brain off. They turn one hemisphere of their brain off. And it's called unilateral, I can't remember what the word is, unilateral something. And so they essentially sleep with one eye open and have half their brain working at one time so that they can be always alert for predators around them. And then when they, wake up from that one side after about 10 minutes or so, they switch over to the other side and let that other half of their brain rest.
Yeah, I think some of our kids who've been doing a lot of virtual learning over the last few months will be very familiar with that tactic, but it's a very, very cool thing in science. One of the neatest things I think I've ever heard about. Mr. G's class, joining us at Mississauga. If you guys want to come in for a question, go for it.
Yeah, so from one of my students, they want to know, can you tell the difference in their calls, like what they're saying to each other?
Sure. The more you look at them, I think yes. They have definitely different categories of types of calls that they make. Like they produce a very specific call called a buzz when they're narrowing in on a fish that they're about to catch. They produce burst pulses when they're talking to one another. And then there's a lot of different types of burst pulses as well. And the science is still pretty slow on burst pulses, but we're starting to piece together, different ones that we see them make when right before they leap out of the water, or right before, they kind of bump into each other, and they know that they use them also in aggression towards one another. Sometimes they'll go up and blow a burst pulse kind of in the other one's face, and the other one will shoot off and swim away right away. And, it took the hint. And with whistles, for sure, there's been a lot more work done on whistles, recognizing them to actual individuals and it being their signature, just like we would write our names. Their whistle is their identifier. So absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Very, very cool. And one thing that's kind of neat for our classes that might not know is that this field is very, very young, like listening in on other communication of animals, intelligent animals, be it elephants, primates, whales, dolphins. I mean, this is fairly new stuff, which is really exciting for Dr. Martin to get to explore this whole new world. But yes, we've identified other calls in primates as well, where you can tell the difference between like a warning call for a hawk, warning call for a snake, that sort of thing. So it's early days, but it's very, very exciting stuff. Awesome. Let's head to Kitchener, home of my favorite pizza place in the entire world. For Crestview, Miss Clagus' class, if you guys have one for us, come on in.
Okay, Luke's got a question. He's ready.
How deep can a bottlenose dolphin dive?
Wow. Oh, man. Okay. How deep can a bottlenose dolphin dive? Gosh, I'm not sure. I know it's a few hundred feet. I'm not positive, though. Don't quote me on that, but I think that it would be probably it'll be a few hundred feet.
Yeah.
Let's say that.
Cool question, guys. Hard to know the exact thing, but that's very cool. Let's head to Miss Smith's class, joining us in Burlington. If you guys have one for us, come on in. Hi.
Hi. My question is, how do they make the clicks and whistle those noises? I'm not exactly sure how.
Okay, that's a really good question. So they have little structures inside of their heads, just kind of behind their forehead, that's in the soft tissue of their sinus cavities. And they actually think that they produce clicks with the right side of their head and whistles with the left side. So they have a right sinus cavity and a left sinus cavity. And they do it by recycling air inside of their sinus cavities, and it's pressurized air that they project, and it gets funneled out of their forehead into a beam straight out of their forehead that goes into the water. Crazy.
Very, very cool. They do this a little bit in Finding Dory. They sort of showcase this with the beluga whale. So that's, I guess, the most popular, accessible version of that. I'm going to go to Miss Krinsky's class. They're joining us in the fittingly named Maple, Ontario. And then I'll take a few more from our YouTube group. So Miss Krinsky, come on in.
Hi, thanks so much for having us. My class has a ton of questions. So hopefully maybe we can email you afterwards with some specific ones. But one of the questions that keep coming up is the benefit of echolocation. If the whales and dolphins can see, how does that impact their vision? Do they not see as well because they have such strong echolocation, or are they both really strong? The kids just want to know about eyesight and echolocation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you may have actually seen videos of animals popping their heads up out of the water and looking around, and that's called spy hopping. And they will do this at short distances. They can see out of the water. They can see underwater too, but it's just so dark that it's like you and me. It doesn't help even if we have good vision. If the lights are out, you still can't see, right? So that's why they use their echolocation. And we've done experiments where we've actually blindfolded the porpoises and dolphins underwater and sent them to search for a target that they could see in the daylight underwater, like a shallow target, and then blindfolded them, and they forcing them just to echolocate to find it. And we show that they still use their echolocation no matter what, always to navigate underwater. So they rely on echolocation as their number one vision sense underwater, but then they can use their own actual vision with their eyes above water to look around. But they can't really see too far. I mean, they can probably see around what we can see. But we also know that they are colorblind. They have monochromatic vision, so they see in black and white.
Yeah. How cool is that? Thanks, Miss Krinsky, for the question, and that was awesome. All right, I'm going to take a question from Miss Duncan's class. They're joining us in North Carolina. They want to know, what is the diet of these whales composed of, and would they ever attack, harm, or eat people? You have to be worried in the water with these whales. Are they coming for you, or what's going on?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, depending on the species, the diet is very variable. Like I mentioned, baleen whales, they eat the littlest things in the food chain. They eat the plankton and the krill, which is like a little type of shrimp kind of thing. And so those guys are just pretty much harmless when it comes to anything like that. Other species like the toothed whales, they eat a lot of different types of fish, from little fish to big fish, and squid and octopus. And they also, like orcas, certain types of orcas, they will hunt other marine mammals. So they'll eat seals and young whales or dolphins. From at the moment, there still is no account of a orca in the wild ever attacking a human. There was the case, a couple cases at SeaWorld in captivity. But in the wild, we've had a lot of what you would call a close call, and there still has never been any documented human attacks.
Yeah, which is good because really orcas are, you mentioned orcas a few times, they are the most, like, they're the apex predator of the entire ocean. They've been observing blue whales, hunting great white sharks. Like, they're very, very cool. So I'm glad they haven't considered us part of the food chain just yet.
Me too.
All right, one more from YouTube, and then I'm going to go back to our live classes where the kids are in the class to start. We'll see if we can get everyone, but I'll try my best. Yuri in Miss Cleveland's class in Alberta, grade 3, wants to know, what is the furthest migration a whale goes? How far are they traveling across the oceans?
Oh gosh. Okay, I believe the farthest is the gray whale, which goes from its populations up in the Bering and Chukchi Sea and all the way up there north of Alaska and off of Western Canada and Eastern Russia, and they swim all the way down to the tip of Mexico to Cabo and back up again every year. It takes them about 3 months each way to do it, I think. And it's thousands, over 1,000 miles. I know that, maybe a couple thousand. I know I usually work in kilometers because I work in the metric system. Oh yeah, you guys are mostly, well, a lot of you are calling in from Canada. I guess we have a mixed group here.
I just looked it up actually as we were talking about it. So the record, this is like an article in Nature in 2015. 22,000 kilometers it did total in 172 days from Russia to Mexico and back, which is crazy.
22,000.
22,000. That's like almost the entire circumference of the Earth. So basically, you could go around the entire planet in like half a year for one animal and see it, which is mind-blowing. So great question, guys. All right, I'm going to head back to Mr. Shattuck's class for now, and then we'll go to, again, our live classes with the kids in class first, and we'll see what we can do. So Mr. Shattuck, come on in.
Hi, what was the white stuff growing on one of the whales in the videos?
Ah, that's a good question. So that's actually specific to the species. You were seeing a southern right whale. There's also right whales in the northern hemisphere too. They all grow these bumps on them that are made of hardened calcium. They're called callosities, and they're these big old patches that grow naturally on their bodies just for right whales. And you can actually identify them taking pictures of each animal. Their callosities grow in different patterns, so each one is unique to the animal, like a fingerprint.
I do have the spelling right below, correct? For
you do.
Excellent. There you go. People can check that out when they're done the broadcast. All right, let's head back to Cresty, Ms. Clagus' class. If you guys have one for us, come on in.
Okay, we have a team of 2 girls with the same question. Come over, Jillian and Michaela.
Team questions are the best.
Crouch down.
What is your favorite whale and why?
Oh my goodness. My favorite, I think, is a narwhal. And those are up in the Arctic. And they have the long, big tusk on the front of them. They're like the unicorns of the sea. I love them because they're so cool. And their tusk is actually their front left incisor tooth that grows really long and spirals out of their lip and shoots out for up to, I think they grow up to 5 meters, 3 to 5 meters long. That's pretty crazy.
We have some pretty incredible whales off the coast of Canada. You know, belugas, you mentioned bowhead earlier.
Yeah.
They're really, it's a menagerie of some really amazing creatures. So for our Canadian classrooms, do check that out. And so much off our coast. I love that chart you showed earlier too. I remember that when I was a kid, things like that. So nice to learn the species. Miss Smith's class, if you guys have another question for us, come on in, guys.
What's your favorite part of your job and what is your education?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I guess I didn't really go into that too far earlier. So I have a master's degree in marine science from the University of San Diego in California. I have a PhD in zoology from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. So I actually lived in Africa for 3.5 years, and I moved back in 2019 when I finished. And I have just also a bachelor's degree in biology. That's where I first started. And my favorite thing about my job is definitely doing the field work and getting to go out on the boat and see these animals up close in person and getting to study them that way.
Great question, guys. By the way, for our classes that might not know, those are some of the coolest places to do science in the entire world. So lucky, Morgan, that is quite the career resume. Let's see if we can try and get questions from all our other classes. We've got 5 minutes. We can do it. Mr. Dunn, come on in. Go for it.
All right. We have a question from Elishba. So Let's see. Well, I'll put her on my screen there. Alishba, do you want to ask your question? Go ahead, kiddo. Put her on my screen there. Alishba, do you want to ask your question?
Yes. When do their babies go on their own?
That's a great question. It depends on the species. Typically, they will stay with their mother from between, a lot of times they only stay with their moms for about a year and then they go on their own. Sometimes they can do it up to 5 years, and some never leave. Like some types of killer whales and sperm whales and other things, they have really close, tight family groups. And a lot of the times the females and the moms and the grandmas, they'll be the leaders of the group, and the daughters will stay with them the whole time. And the sons will go off on their own when they're old enough.
Yeah.
So.
Great question, guys. We've been getting a lot of that on YouTube as well, so I'm really glad we got that question. Thanks, Alishba. All right, Miss Oak's class, come on in, guys.
Yeah, we have a question about are whales as smart as dolphins? We know dolphins are, known to be really, really smart, but how about whales?
Well, I think that it's never really truly been tested on a big baleen whale, just because they're so big that you can't keep them in captivity anywhere in order to run the mental tests that they try on like bottlenose dolphins at aquariums and stuff. So we know that obviously dolphins are extremely intelligent and they can do arithmetic, they can be taught all sorts of things. We know that they have a very long-term memory, that they can recognize individuals they've met from years prior that they haven't seen in years, and then when they see them again, they know. So we know from that they are very, very smart. We can assume that whales are very, very intelligent as well. A lot of times that you look is the size of the brain to the body ratio in different animals and in mammals. And dolphins and whales have one of the largest brain to body size ratios of any animal other than humans and primates. So yes, we think that they are very, very smart.
One of the coolest ways to sort of illustrate this, and I think our classes would get a kick out of this when you're done, check out humpback whales in particular and all the hunting strategies that they use around the world. They're like distinct cultures of how humpback whales hunt their prey. Killer whales have been seen doing this too in a lot of ways. And it's just incredible the different strategies they come up with to find prey. So I encourage you guys to check that out. I'm going to go to Mr. G's class in 2 seconds and then finish up with Ms. Krinsky's. But the biggest question we're getting on YouTube, so I feel compelled to share it, is, what do you make of whales in captivity? Is this something that you support? Is that something where there's a nuanced answer to it? I always love the captivity question. So,
Sure. Well, obviously, I am more in the world of marine mammal conservation, and I work with wild animals, typically in general. But I have had one experience where I worked at a facility in Denmark where we had a captive harbor porpoise and some seals. But it was an open sea net. There were no tanks or anything like that, and it was actually just a net on where the tide and the ocean kind of came in and out, and fish could come in naturally. And we did a lot of acoustics experiments, learning about their echolocation there. And it was, for me, I think if you have to have an animal in captivity in that sense, that would be the best. That's the way to go, and it provides you a good way for them to still be in their natural environment and to be able to swim around and catch their own fish, compared to being in a tank and essentially being asked to perform a show like at SeaWorld. So from my perspective, I am against putting animals on display for show purposes to make money. But if an animal in captivity can provide you the ability to study it, and it has a healthy relationship and is in a healthy place, and there's a very, very small number of those animals that are in captivity, and that actually good research is done on them and they're not being used for the public display, then I can see both sides of the equation.
Well, and our kids that are in this broadcast are growing up in a really interesting time where there's a lot of serious policy discussions based on in captivity. Now, whales and dolphins are a very unique case because they require a lot of space. They're very intelligent, so it's an iffier prospect. Same with elephants and great apes. One thing I just suggest for all our students, wherever you're tuning in from today, and wherever you ever have the chance to go to a zoo or aquarium, look for accreditation. So look for something in Canada and the US called AZA or CAZA. And what that means is that the animals that are kept there are at the highest standard of animal care. So little roadside zoos, usually don't meet that standard. Huge zoos like here in Toronto, the Toronto Zoo, are certainly to that standard, and the people there are caring for the animals in really the best possible way, by the world standard. So check for those things. It helps a lot. Whales and dolphins, bit of a bigger discussion, but I'm really glad we got that question, and thank you for answering it, Morgan. Let's head to Mr. G's class, and we'll finish up with Miss Krinsky in a second. So Mr. G, come on in.
Hi, this is from Mohammed. Mohammed wants to know, do whales and dolphins jump out of the water? And if they do, why?
Oh, wow. They jump out of the water a lot, actually. Some more than others, depending on the species. We call it breaching in the big whales. They launch themselves out and they kind of spin in the air and then fall back down on their backs, their sides. And sometimes they do it to knock off barnacles or parasites they have growing on their skin. Other times they use it as a display. Sometimes males will do it over and over again, we think, to kind of let them announce that they're the big bad male of the area and it's their territory and they're showing off for a lady, kind of like a courtship display. Other times we see a lot of dolphins just leaping and playing. It looks like they're having fun.
Yeah.
Like they just like to do it.
Great question, Mr. G. Check out spinner dolphins when you're done, because it's one of the most fun things. They actually twirl in the air like this, as a neat follow-up to that question. Miss Krinsky, last but not least, if you want to come in and finish us off back in Maple, come on in.
Thank you so much. Again, Morgan, we had such an amazing morning with you. We have still a ton of questions. All of my students actually have been asking questions, so I can't get to all of them, but specifically a student has been asking, in terms of the difference between echolocation between bats and other animals versus dolphins and whales that you've studied, is there a different way that they're communicating in terms of how the sounds are produced, or is echolocation just similar in all animals, just different sounds that they produce?
Sure. Well, so in the case of bats, and then only on land, there's only been one, I believe, one or two other types of birds called oil birds that live in caves that echolocate. Otherwise, it's just the toothed whales and the bats are the only things on Earth that can echolocate. So if you're comparing bats to toothed whales, all toothed whales echolocate using their sinuses and projecting it out of that. It's called the melon. It's this kind of fat cavity on the front of their foreheads, and it helps channel the sound into the water. Some bats echolocate out of their heads, and others open their mouths and echolocate out of their mouth. So it depends on the species. And then a bat has a lot of different facial characteristics to help channel the echo and to help receive it. So a lot of bats will have these huge ears that will funnel this echo when it comes back to them. And they have a lot of grooves in their faces that helps, manipulate the sound and make sure it's either reflected back properly at them or sent out in the right way that they want it to be. And a dolphin, they don't change their facial expressions, but they can kind of manipulate their forehead a little bit. So I guess that's the main difference, is sometimes bats echolocate from their heads or their mouths, but toothed whales just out of their foreheads.
Yeah. I have a really quick follow-up on this. With bats, I know that when they do the scream yell, it's actually so loud that it would deafen them with the size of their ears, so their ears shut off as they scream and open up again. Is this true of whales? When they make that initial blast, do they have to shut off their ears? Is this something that we know about or not?
I don't know if that has ever been looked at, to be honest. I kind of don't. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not sure.
I was just curious. Great question, Ms. Krinsky. Great question to everyone today. This was so much fun. A perfect kickoff to our International Day of Women in STEM. I just want to say and bring up again the fact that all weekend long, almost 50 programs, incredible women from across the globe. So do tune in Friday through Sunday if you're keen, as a classroom with your family, whatever works for you. And what we're going to do now, Morgan, is at the end of every broadcast, we bring in all our classes to say a big thank you and goodbye. So I really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And with that, Mr. Dunn, Miss Oakes, Mr. Shattuck, Mr. G, Miss Plagas, Miss Smith, and Miss Krinsky. You want to join in saying a big